Hello there. It's mid-June and this is a really good time to be doing your second sowings. You need to do second sowings of leafy crops like lettuces and spinach because certainly with spinach, the first crop that you sowed in March, planted out in April, will be over now, and maybe your lettuces will be starting to bolt. So now you need to be planning ahead for your second crop for the late part of the summer. But of course we also need to be planting things for the winter, so things like Brussels sprouts I have here, and parsnips, where you've got a winter crop, and now's a good time to be planting, to sowing the seeds and then plant them out in 4, 5 or 6 weeks time. I'm still fairly new to this, but I've learned quite a lot this year as I've been growing in my new raised beds. And just so I thought I'd just share a few things with you, things that I do slightly differently from people that I've watched online and friends. And there are 4 main things that I think it's worth doing differently. The first is to soak your seeds before you sow them. The seeds need moisture to stimulate the germination, and so actually if you soak them, whatever the sort of the seed is, you're going to get a better result if you've soaked them overnight beforehand. Now something like fennel I've got here, you're going to see the seeds, they are pretty tough little seedlings those, and in fact it's recommended that you soak fennel for 48 hours before planting them out. Something like beetroot actually germinates really easily, but because of that, beetroot seeds are actually coated with something to prevent them germinating. So at the very least, you've got to rinse your beetroot seeds off. But all seeds will germinate better if you soak them overnight. So I've got Brussels sprouts here, which I'm going to sow, and I've got fennel and beetroot. I've also got a second crop I'm hoping to grow of cauliflower and a second crop of calabrese or broccoli. And I've got my parsnips here again for a winter crop. So that's the first thing, is soak them overnight. If you don't believe me how important it is to soak your seeds beforehand, look at this in the Brussels sprouts. Can you see that a couple of them have germinated already just by sitting in water for a day and a half? How about that? The second thing is to use module trays. Now for leafy vegetables where you've got very fine seedlings like lettuce and spinach, you'll need to sow them in a seed tray, and then as they germinate you'll need to then prick them out. But for any seed that's large enough for you to handle, you can actually sow in a module tray. And I found a really excellent module tray is something like this. So you've got the modules on the top, and then you've got a water tray underneath. And what that means is that you never then have to actually water your seedlings from above, which could actually damage them. They're always drawing up water from underneath. It also means, because they have got holes in the bottom here, then you're never going to overwater them and rot the roots. If you haven't got a special thing like this, you can just I got a module tray I picked up actually second hand from a garden centre, and I chopped it into the size I wanted, and then a seed tray without holes in, which will just hold water. So that's the second thing to do. The third thing I do is I actually get the module tray. I've got one here and I've filled it with compost, and then what I do is I actually water it before I start to sow. You know, quite often I watch people on TV and watch people online, and they sow the seeds in and then say, well, you've got to water it very carefully so you don't disturb the seeds. Well, why not water first? And actually, once you've got nice firm compost, you firm the compost down, then you water it, and then you've got a nice moist soaked compost for the seeds to go in. The germination is going to be triggered by really close and good contact with moist, warm compost. So water it first. And then the other thing that I do is differently is a lot of people you'll see, they sow the seeds and then they sprinkle compost on top the right depth. Well, why not just simply plant the seeds into the compost, and then you don't need to mess around with sprinkling compost on top and firming it down. So just make your compost nice and firm, water it first, and then you can sow the seeds in direct. So here I've got my tray of compost, and you need a really high-tech piece of equipment here. I use a pencil, or of course a pen or a dibber, and then make holes the right depth into the compost in order to just drop the seeds in. You can see that the soil here is really nice and firmed it down so you get good contact with the seeds. Then I just make the hole with the pencil, just 1/4 inch or so. Just a little lump there, get rid of that. And then I've got my parsnip seeds here that I've just strain the water off, and they're quite a good size. They're large enough to handle. Just pop them in, make sure they get in there, down into the soil. There we go, and then just cover up over the top. There we go, a little bit fiddly. Now I'm just sowing one seed in each module here for parsnips, but actually there are lots of crops like leeks and beetroot particularly, where you can actually multi-sow. You can actually put, for beetroot, you can put 4 seeds in each module, and then they'll germinate and you'll get 4 beetroot plants, and you can plant them out in that little group. No need to separate them, and they'll grow together and they'll just jostle and grow out. But parsnips, I think you need to sow 1 per module. Just continue doing that until you've filled the whole tray. And there you have it. Last thing to remember is that for seeds to germinate, they need warmth, not light. Don't worry about light at all. They just need to be somewhere warm and kept moist as well. Make sure they don't dry out, the compost doesn't dry out. Once the seedlings start to show, that's when they need light. So once most of the tray is actually germinated and you've got your sprout shoots coming up, that's the time to then transfer it to a greenhouse. So you've got a nice controlled temperature and they've got really good light. Happy sowing. Time for me to make another cup of tea, I think. Last thing I forgot to mention, labels. Don't forget to label your seeds once you've sown them, because otherwise you won't know what they are. Now for that cup of tea.